So there has been a lot of work that's gone on looking at the genetics of EGIDs. And unlike simple gene mutations that can be passed down from family to family, EGIDs are not that type of change in the genetic program. There are changes that are much smaller in genes that we call single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. And it's these changes, these SNPs, that seem to confer a greater susceptibility to develop a certain disease, as opposed to you will develop the disease. So there have been SNPs identified for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and up to 160 different types of changes in the genetic various genes and patterns that can be seen in inflammatory bowel disease. Right now we have several that have been identified for EGIDs. One of the first was changes in the eotaxin-3 gene. There are changes in a gene called TSLP, and changes in a gene called calpin-14. These SNPs seem to confer a higher incidence of developing the disease than the general population, but still relatively small. So the genetic contribution to EGIDs seems to be more in a susceptibility. And we know that because we can see it run within families. So if one child has an EGID, there's about a 10% chance that another child might have an EGID. If you have an EGID, the chances that you might transmit that susceptibility to a child is fairly low. It's about 2%. So right now the genetics, we're still understanding the genetics, and we're still looking for other markers for disease. Where the genetics are really going to become more important is, will it help us in targeting our therapy? Because the patients that have these particular SNPs, will they be more likely to respond to one therapy versus another therapy, so that we can then individualize our therapies, and rather than just try what we typically try, we can say, oh, you have this particular genetic variant, and we know you respond better to this particular therapeutic option. That's the hope of the future of the genetics, is that it'll give us the ability to kind of provide individualized therapy.